welcome to day number 4. Welcome to day number 7. Day number 12.
Welcome to Do It Heartily.
And they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Worship him from your heart, but in truth. Like, not just however you want to. Okay? There was also a promise to obey. Okay? It says, all that thou sayest to me, I will do. There was a willingness to obey on her part. And by the way, this is the secret to knowing what God wants us to do and getting his blessings is by saying, God, whatever you want, I'm going to do it. I'll follow what you ask me to do. If you want me to prepare this way, if you want me to do these things, to approach you, I will do these things. Number 2, though, not just preparation, is submission. Submission. Look at verses 6 through 9. It says, and she went down under the floor and did according to all that her mother-in-law bade her. Did everything that she told her to do. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn, and she came softly and uncovered his feet and laid her down. And it came to pass at midnight that the man was afraid and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. And he said, who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth, thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman. Submission. Now, we've learned before that they're now harvesting, they're reaping all of this grain. And then when they reap it, they're then going to what's called thresh it. And the men of the village would take turns on the threshing floor. So this was apparently Boaz's night to be on the threshing floor. The threshing floor was this imagine this raised up platform. It was usually on the outskirts of the village, and it was usually built into the side of a hill so that it could get some wind that would come off the side of the hill. And what men would do is they would take the sheaves, all the stalks of grain, and they would put it on the threshing floor, the floor of this place. And what they would do is ox would walk on top of it, and as they would walk, it would separate the grain from the stalks. And sometimes they would beat the stalks to get some more of the grain out. And then once the grain was separated, the workers would throw the grain into the air, and that's where this wind would be a big deal, because the breeze would then carry off the shell, the shaft, and the grain, which was heavier than that, would fall to the floor. And then what they would do is they would heap all of the grain together into these big piles before they took it off to market or took it to storage. And every evening, the men would go to the threshing floor. They would do all of this stuff. But then once they piled up all of the grain, that was a precious commodity. That was their money maker, right? And so they would actually sleep on the threshing floor so that nobody would come and steal the grain at night. That's why they were there. Okay. What's interesting, though, is in this passage, the Bible tells us that while he's sleeping there, Ruth falls at Boaz's feet, and it's basically, this whole song and dance is basically a proposal from Ruth, saying, Boaz, I'm interested in you, I think you're interested in me, let's move this thing forward. And what's really funny is that some people may go, why didn't Ruth just wait for Boaz to propose to her? Well, when we read it other times in the passage, there are a few things. We see in Ruth chapter 3, in verse 10, that later on, that it appears that Boaz thought, well, man, I'm old, she's young, she's certainly going to want to marry some young man. He kind of concluded that he was like out of the running. I'm not really a potential here. Verse 12 tells us that also, and we'll see in just a minute, we come to find out that there was actually somebody that was a closer relative, a nearer kinsman than Boaz. And so actually he had, for lack of a better way of saying it, he kind of had first dibs on the whole thing. And so Boaz was just real honest with her, say, hey, listen, this is what's going on. And we've got to give this guy an opportunity before I have that opportunity. But what happens here is, notice what Ruth talks about. She doesn't, in this verse, she doesn't say, I'm Ruth the Moabite. She says, I'm Ruth, thine handmaid. I'm here to serve you. I'm submissive to you. And so she comes and she takes the mantle, she spreads the mantle over a person. She says, I want you to spread your mantle over me. That's what she says. She removes it from his feet. I want you to spread it over me. And when you spread a mantle over a person in Bible times, that meant that you were claiming that person for yourself, particularly in marriage, right? And so that's what she was saying. She said, I'm under you. I want you to be my husband. I want you to be over me. And Ruth had come under the wing of Jehovah, but now she wanted to come under the wing of Boaz. She was submitting herself to him. And that's one of the things that we, as we deepen our relationship, we submit ourselves to the Lord. Number 3 is this, though, to listen. To listen to the Lord. Look at verses 10 through 14. It says, And he said, Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, insomuch as thou followest not young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, fear not, I will do to thee all that thou request. For all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman. Howbeit, there is a kinsman nearer than I. Tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning, that if he will perform unto thee the part of the kinsman, well, let him do the kinsman part. But if he will not do the part of the kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of the kinsman to thee, as the Lord liveth. Lie down until the morning. And she lay at his feet until the morning, and she rose up before one could know another. And he said, Let it not be known that a woman came into the floor. We see an interesting truth in our relationship with God via Boaz and Boaz's reaction to Ruth. When we seek a deeper relationship with God, God hears us. He hears that desire, and he speaks to us. And by the way, when we read his word, we come to some very obvious conclusions. First of all, one of the things he tells us is that he accepts us. He loves us, right? Verses 8 to 10, And it came to pass at midnight, the man was afraid and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. And he said, Who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth, thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thy handmaid, for thou art near kinsman. And he said, Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter. For thou hast shown more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, insomuch as thou followest not young men, whether poor or rich. He said, bless you. He was accepting her, right? He also assures her. He says, hey, listen, let me just tell you, Boaz says, don't be afraid. Fear not. As a matter of fact, in verse 11, he says, And now, my daughter, fear not. Don't worry. We'll take care of this. We'll do what's right. We'll handle this. And again, he tells her, but he's also honest with her, right? Like, hey, let me tell you, there is a nearer kinsman, a relative that's more closely. And again, as I know I haven't gone into all the details, but a kinsman is a close relative, and he says there's actually a closer relative than me. They are the defender of family rights. They had the financial resources to rescue a poverty-stricken family member. Another responsibility of theirs, as we talked about as before, is to provide an heir for a deceased family member, because dying without an heir in Bible times would be considered an absolute tragedy. And that close relative was expected to marry the widow in order to produce a child that would then be considered the heir of the deceased. Again, Jesus did that. He became part of our family. Became our rescuer. He became our advocate. But in order for the kinsman redeemer to be a kinsman redeemer, he had to fulfill a couple requirements. Again, first of all, he had to be a relative of those that he would redeem. He had to be able to pay the price of redemption. He had to be able to pay what it was going to cost. But then he also had to be willing to redeem the individual. Okay, they had to be free from debt themselves. Okay, and by the way, Jesus was all of those things. Jesus was a relative of ours because he took on flesh. He became human like us. He was able to pay the price because he had perfect, sinless blood, right? But he was also willing to pay the price, right? He was willing, and he was free of debt himself. He had no sin in and of himself. And so when we listen to God, we find these truths that assure us, that help us,